The fire was dying, and Mira didn't have the strength to gather more wood. She had been walking for 3 days since being sent away, her feet covered in painful blisters and bleeding, her body weak from no food and complete tiredness. The thin cloak she was allowed to take gave little protection against the cold autumn weather, and she knew that if she didn't find shelter soon, she wouldn't live through another night. But there was no shelter, only endless forest going in every direction, dark and cruel. So she stopped in a small clearing, built a weak fire from wet twigs and dead leaves, and sat with her back against a fallen log, waiting for whatever would come. Probably wolves or bears, or simply the cold getting into her bones until she fell asleep and never woke up. It seemed like a mercy compared to the life she had left behind. Mira closed her eyes, remembering the rejection ceremony. She had known it was coming. Everyone had known. From the moment she presented as an Omega at 16, it had been clear that something was wrong with her. She couldn't shift, couldn't feel the pack bonds, couldn't even sense other wolves unless they were standing right in front of her. The pack healers had looked at her, declared her broken, and her family had been embarrassed because of her. Her parents had died when she was 12, killed in a fight over territory with a neighboring pack. She remembered her father's last words to her mother, shouting for them to run, to take Mira and her younger sister Emma to safety. But her mother had refused to leave him, and they had both died defending the border. After that, Mira and Emma had been raised by the pack because they had to, not because anyone loved them. The other wolves had put up with them, but barely, especially after Mira's problem became clear. Emma had been the lucky one. She had presented as a normal Omega at 15, could shift perfectly, and had been matched with a Beta from a neighboring pack. She had moved away 2 years ago, and Mira hadn't heard from her since. Emma had made it clear she wanted nothing to do with a broken sister who would only hurt her reputation in her new pack. When Mira turned 21, the youngest age for mating, her planned mate had publicly rejected her in front of the entire Silverpine pack. Garrett, a strong Beta with good bloodlines, had looked at her with disgust and spoken the formal words. "I reject you, Mira, as my mate. You're broken. You're useless to this pack. You'll never have strong pups. You're not worthy of the Silverpine name." The rejection hadn't hurt as much as it should have. Mira had never felt the mate bond with Garrett anyway, had never felt anything but a vague sense of duty. But the banishment that followed had been brutal. She had been given 1 hour to gather her belongings, not allowed to say goodbye to anyone, and walked to the territory border by armed guards, who made it clear she would be killed if she ever tried to return. So here she was, alone in the wilderness, waiting to die with nothing but a dying fire and the clothes on her back. The wind picked up, sending sparks from the fire spinning into the darkness. Mira pulled her cloak tighter and tried to ignore the terrible hunger in her stomach. She had found some berries earlier, but they had made her sick, and she had learned the hard way that she didn't have the survival skills needed for life outside a pack. She was going to die out here. It was only a question of how long it would take. A branch snapped somewhere in the darkness. Mira's eyes flew open, her heart suddenly racing. She stared into the shadows beyond the firelight, trying to see what was out there. Another snap, closer this time, then the sound of paws on fallen leaves, soft and careful. They had come for her. She didn't move, didn't try to run. There was no point. If it was a predator, she was too weak to fight or run away. If it was a Silverpine patrol come to make sure she truly left, she was already dead. She simply sat there watching the darkness and waited. The first wolf came out from the trees slowly, carefully, its golden eyes reflecting the firelight. It was huge, easily twice the size of a normal wolf, with dark gray fur and scars along its nose. A wild wolf, then, not a shifter. Mira had heard stories about the wild wolves that lived deep in the forest, descendants of ancient bloodlines that had never learned to take human form. They were supposed to be dangerous, protective of their territory, and mean toward shifters. But this wolf wasn't attacking. It stood at the edge of the clearing, head lowered, watching her with such focus that it made her skin tingle. And then, to her shock, it took 3 steps forward and laid down right there between her and the forest, like it was guarding her. Mira stared, unable to understand what she was seeing. Wild wolves didn't behave this way. They didn't come near fires. They didn't lie down near strangers. They certainly didn't position themselves as protectors, Before she could make sense of it, a second wolf appeared. This one was lighter in color, almost silver, with smart amber eyes. It looked at the first wolf, then at Mira, and seemed to make a decision. It walked calmly to the opposite side of the fire and laid down, copying the position of the first. Then came a third, and a fourth, and more, coming out from the darkness one by one, each taking a position around the clearing until Mira was surrounded by a ring of wolves. She counted them in stunned silence. 20 massive wild wolves, all lying in a protective circle around her fire, their eyes glowing in the darkness like stars. It should have been terrifying. It should have sent her climbing for the nearest tree, screaming for help that would never come. But instead, Mira felt something she hadn't felt in years. Safety, warmth, connection. As if these wolves, these wild creatures that owed her nothing, had decided she was worth protecting. One of the wolves, a large male with a clear white patch on his chest, stood up and walked toward her. Mira held her breath, her body frozen as he came near. He stopped just inches away, close enough that she could feel the heat coming from his body, and lowered his massive head until his nose was level with her face. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then slowly, the wolf pressed his forehead against hers. The feeling that flooded through Mira was impossible to describe. It wasn't a pack bond, not like the ones she had heard about. It was something older, deeper, more ancient. She could feel the wolf's emotions, his curiosity, his recognition, his complete certainty that she belonged here with them, under their protection. And underneath it all, a single word echoed in her mind, spoken in a voice that wasn't quite human and wasn't quite animal. Sister. The wolf pulled back and returned to his position in the circle. The others settled in, some resting their heads on their paws, others keeping watch on the forest around them. And Mira sat there shaking, trying to understand what had just happened. She was a wolf speaker. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She had heard whispers of them in old stories her grandmother used to tell back before her parents died. Grandmother had been the pack's keeper of legends, and she had told Mira and Emma tales about rare individuals who could talk with true wolves, who could command them, who were respected by ancient packs as blessed by the moon goddess herself. But grandmother had died shortly after their parents, her heart broken by the loss of her son, and the stories had died with her. Mira had always thought they were just legends, myths. They weren't supposed to be real, except it was real because she could feel them now. All 20 wolves, their emotions and thoughts touching her mind like gentle waves. They weren't here by accident. They had felt her presence, recognized what she was, and come to protect her because that was what wolves did. They protected their own. Tears began to stream down Mira's face. For the first time since her rejection, since her banishment, since her entire miserable life in a pack that had never wanted her, she felt like she belonged somewhere. Not with the shifters who had kicked her out. With these wild, beautiful creatures who had accepted her without question. She fell asleep that night, surrounded by wolves, warmer and safer than she had ever been in the Silver Pine pack. When morning came, the wolves were still there. They rose with the sun, stretching and shaking out their fur, but none of them left. The large male with the white chest patch came up to her again, and this time Mira reached out carefully, running her fingers through his thick fur. He leaned into the touch, a low rumble of happiness coming from his chest. "Thank you," she whispered, "for staying, for protecting me." The wolf's amber eyes met hers and she felt his response. Not words exactly, but meaning, intention. "You are pack. We stay." Over the following days, a routine developed. The wolves would hunt, bringing down deer and elk, and they would share their kills with Mira, teaching her how to survive in the wilderness. She learned which plants were safe to eat, where to find fresh water, how to build a proper shelter. The wolves were patient teachers, showing her through actions and emotions rather than words. And Mira absorbed everything like a sponge. She named the large male with the white patch Storm because his presence felt like the calm before thunder. The silver female became Luna for her moon-colored fur, a scarred black wolf who always took the night watch she called Shadow. A reddish-brown female who was constantly bringing her flowers and herbs became Sage. A young male with one torn ear who was playful and full of energy became Dash. One by one, she came to know each member of her new pack. There was Frost, an older white wolf with wise blue eyes who seemed to be the pack's elder. Ember, a rust-colored female with a fierce protective streak. River, a sleek gray male who loved water and often brought her fish from nearby streams. Thorn, a battle-scarred brown male who had clearly seen violence but was surprisingly gentle. And more, each with their own personality, their own quirks, their own story written in scars and behavior. They weren't mindless beasts. They were individuals, intelligent and complex, with their own thoughts and feelings. And they loved her, not as a weak omega to be put up with, but as family, as pack, as something precious that needed to be protected. 3 weeks passed in this way, and Mira grew stronger. Her feet healed, her body filled out from regular meals. Her senses sharpened, and she found that being around the wolves was unlocking something inside her that had been sleeping for years. She still couldn't shift into wolf form, but she could feel the forest now, could sense other creatures moving through it, could hear things that normal human ears would miss. She was becoming what she had always been meant to be, not a broken omega, a wolf speaker. It was on a cold morning when frost covered the ground, and her breath came out in white clouds that everything changed. Mira was sitting by the fire, Luna resting beside her when Storm suddenly stood, his body going stiff. The other wolves rose immediately, forming a defensive line between Mira and the southern edge of the clearing. Someone was coming. Mira stood slowly, her heart beginning to race. Through the bond with her wolves, she could feel their tension, their readiness to attack if needed. But underneath that, there was something else. Curiosity, recognition. As if whatever was coming wasn't completely a threat. A man came out from the trees, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair and eyes that gleamed gold in the morning light. He was dressed in practical traveling clothes, and he moved with the easy grace of a predator. An alpha, Mira realized. She could feel the power coming from him, even without a pack bond to confirm it. He stopped at the edge of the clearing, his gaze sweeping over the wolves before landing on Mira. For a long moment, he said nothing. Just stared at her with an expression she couldn't read. Then he bowed. Actually bowed like she was someone important. "Forgive the interruption," he said, his voice deep and controlled. "My name is Darius. I'm Alpha of the Ironwood Pack, and I've been searching for you for a very long time." Mira thought about his words carefully. A search that long meant he had known what to look for. "You knew about wolf speakers," she said, not asking. "You knew one existed." "I did," Darius confirmed, seeming pleased she had understood quickly. "You're not nobody, Mira. You're a wolf speaker, one of the rarest gifts the moon goddess can give. And if the rumors I've been hearing are true, you're the first one to appear in over a century." He took a step forward and Storm growled low in his throat. "A warning." Darius stopped immediately, raising his hands in a peaceful gesture. "I mean her no harm," he said, speaking to the wolf directly. "I've come to offer protection and answers." Mira studied him carefully. He had known about wolf speakers. He had been searching. He had shown respect to Storm. This wasn't random. "You said answers. To what specifically? To why you couldn't shift, why you felt disconnected from your pack, why you were rejected." Darius's golden eyes were intense, focused entirely on her. Wolf speakers don't shift because their gift is to walk between worlds. Human and wolf, tame and wild. You're a bridge, a translator, a guardian of the old ways. Your former pack rejected you because they didn't understand what you are. But I do. Mira felt her throat tighten with emotion. All her life she had been told she was broken, useless, a mistake of nature. And now this alpha, this stranger, was telling her she was something else entirely, something valuable. But she had learned to be careful of offers that seemed too good. "What do you want from me?" she asked directly. "I want to offer you a place in my pack," Darius said. "Not as an omega, as a wolf speaker, as someone who can help us reconnect with the wild wolves, who can teach us the old ways that have been lost. The Ironwood Pack values tradition, history, and gifts like yours. You would be honored among us, protected, free to live as you choose." It sounded too good to be true. Mira had learned the hard way that when something seemed too good to be true, it usually was. "And what would you get in return?" she asked. Darius smiled, a small knowing curve of his lips. "Honestly, a stronger pack. Wild wolves are powerful allies. And if you can speak to them, work with them, We would have an advantage that no other pack has. But more than that, I would get the satisfaction of knowing that a rare gift is being nurtured instead of wasted. I don't like seeing potential destroyed by ignorance. Storm moved to Mira's side, pressing against her leg. Through the bond, she felt his opinion of Darius. The Alpha was telling the truth. He meant what he said, but the choice was hers. Mira looked around at her wolves, at the clearing that had become her home, at the simple life she had built in just 3 weeks. She could stay here, live wild, survive on her own terms. It would be hard, especially when winter came, but it would be free. Or she could take a chance. Trust this Alpha. See if there was a place for her among shifters after all. If I come with you, she said slowly, the wolves come too. All of them. They're my pack now, and I won't abandon them. Darius nodded without hesitation. Agreed. In fact, having them nearby would be perfect. There's territory next to Ironwood lands that's unclaimed. We could make it a sanctuary for wild wolves under your protection. They would be safe there, and you could visit whenever you wish. It was a good offer. More than good. It was everything she could have hoped for and more, but Mira had been burned before by promises that turned to ash. She needed more than words. Prove it, she said. Prove you value what I am. Swear an oath to the moon goddess that you'll never try to force me to shift, that you'll never punish me for being different, and that you'll protect my wolves as you would your own pack members. Darius's expression turned serious. He dropped to one knee, placing his right hand over his heart, and looked up at the sky, where the moon still hung faintly in the morning light. I, Darius of the Ironwood Pack, swear by the moon goddess who watches over all wolves that I will honor Mira, the wolf speaker. I will never force her to be anything other than what she is. I will never punish her for her gifts, and I will protect the wild wolves under her care as I would my own blood. May the goddess strike me down if I break this oath. The air seemed to shimmer around him as he spoke, and Mira felt the weight of the oath settle into place like a physical thing. It was real, binding. He couldn't break it without facing godly consequences. Slowly, she nodded. Then I accept your offer, Alpha Darius. I'll come to Ironwood, but know this. If you betray me, if you betray my wolves, I'll leave, and I'll take every wild wolf in this territory with me. You'll have made an enemy that no pack can defend against. Darius rose, and there was respect in his eyes. I would expect nothing less. Come, let's go home. The journey to Ironwood territory took 2 days with Mira riding on horseback while her wolves ran alongside. Darius had brought supplies and equipment, suggesting he had been confident she would agree to come. It should have annoyed her, but instead she found it oddly reassuring. He had prepared. He had planned. He took her seriously. During the journey, Darius told her more about his pack and why he had been searching for a wolf speaker. His grandmother, Helena, had been the last known wolf speaker in the Northern Territories. She died 30 years ago, long before Darius was born, but her legend had shaped his entire life. She could command entire armies of wild wolves, Darius explained as they made camp the first night. She made peace between warring packs. She was respected, loved, and could not be replaced. When she died, something vital was lost from our pack. A connection to the natural world that we've been trying to get back ever since. He poked at the fire, his expression distant. My father told me stories about her. How she would sing to the wolves and they would come running. How she could sense danger through them, protect the pack from threats we would never see coming. How she taught that shifters and wild wolves were meant to work together, not fear each other. Your father, Mira said carefully. He's not Alpha anymore. He died 5 years ago, Darius said, protecting the pack from a rogue attack. I became Alpha at 23, younger than I should have been, and the first thing I did was look at the old records, the family trees that track rare bloodlines. That's when I found the information about wolf speakers, about your grandmother's line. Mira sat up straighter. You knew about my grandmother. I knew she was a legend keeper in Silverpine Pack, Darius said. I knew she had been friends with my grandmother, Helena, that they had written letters about the old ways, and I knew that her granddaughter had presented as Omega at 16 and couldn't shift. The pieces fit. So you've been watching me for 5 years, Mira said, and it should have felt wrong, but somehow it didn't. He had been looking for someone like her, not following her specifically. "I've been waiting," Darius corrected, "hoping that when the time came, when you needed help, I would be there. When I heard about your rejection and banishment 3 days ago, I came immediately. I just didn't expect to find you had already awakened your gift." That night, Mira slept surrounded by her wolves, with Darius keeping watch on the other side of the fire. She could feel his eyes on her occasionally, not threatening, but protective, and something in her chest warmed at the realization that she had more than just wolves looking out for her now. When they finally arrived at the Ironwood compound, Mira was amazed by what she saw. It was nothing like Silverpine. Instead of a single main building surrounded by cabins, Ironwood was a collection of structures built into and around massive oak trees, connected by rope bridges and wooden walkways. It looked like something out of a fairy tale, natural and beautiful, and completely in harmony with the forest. The pack members who came out to greet them were equally surprising. They didn't pull back from the wild wolves or look at Mira with disgust. Instead, they bowed respectfully, murmuring words of welcome, their eyes filled with curiosity rather than judgment. "Mira is a wolf speaker," Darius announced to the gathered crowd. "She and her companions are under my personal protection. Anyone who disrespects her or harms her wolves will answer to me directly. Is that understood?" A chorus of "Yes, Alpha," echoed through the clearing. Darius led Mira to a home built into the branches of an ancient oak, with windows that looked out over the forest and a large balcony where her wolves could rest. It was beautiful, comfortable, more than she had ever dared to hope for. "This is yours," Darius said. "For as long as you want it. No conditions, no expectations beyond what you choose to give." Mira walked through the space, running her fingers along the wooden walls, hardly able to believe this was real. Storm followed her inside, sniffing, around, and then laid down near the fireplace with a satisfied huff. Luna joined him, followed by Shadow and Sage, each finding their favorite spot. "They approve," Mira said with a small smile. "Good," Darius replied. "Now, there's something I need to tell you. Something I haven't mentioned yet because I didn't want to influence your decision." Mira turned to face him, curious rather than worried now. She had come to realize over the past 2 days that Darius was straightforward in his dealings. If he had held something back, there was probably a good reason. "I'm unmated," he said carefully. "And when I saw you in that clearing surrounded by 20 wild wolves who would die to protect you, I felt something I've never felt before. The pull of a mate bond." Mira's breath caught. "That's not possible. I was rejected. The bond was broken." "You were rejected by someone who was never your true mate," Darius said. "The goddess doesn't make mistakes, Mira. Garrett was never meant for you, but I think I might be." He took a step closer, and Mira felt it then. The unmistakable warmth of a mate bond, hesitant and new, but definitely real. It was nothing like the empty duty she had felt with Garrett. This was fire and recognition, and a sense of rightness that made her chest ache. "I'm not asking you to accept it right now," Darius said quickly. "I'm not asking for anything except time. Time for you to heal from your rejection. Time for you to settle into your new life. Time to decide if you want this, if you want me. But I needed you to know the truth. I needed you to understand that my search for you wasn't just about duty or tradition. It was destiny." Mira stood there overwhelmed by everything that had happened in the past month. From rejected and banished to wolf speaker and possible mate to an alpha. It was a lot to process. But as she looked at Darius, at the honesty in his golden eyes and felt the mate bond humming softly between them, she realized something important. She didn't have to decide everything right now. She could take her time. She could learn. She could grow into this new life at her own pace. "I need time," she said finally. "But I'm not saying no. I'm saying let me see who I am first. Let me become the wolf speaker I was meant to be, and then maybe we can explore this bond." Darius smiled, genuine and warm. That's all I ask. Take all the time you need, Mira. I'll be here when you're ready." Months passed, and Mira flourished in Ironwood. She worked with the wild wolves, creating the sanctuary that Darius had promised, making a safe place where they could live without fear of hunters or rival packs. The territory was perfect with dense forest, clean streams, and plenty of prey. Her wolves thrived there, and word began to spread. Other wild wolves, lone survivors, or small packs that had been driven from their homes, began to arrive, seeking sanctuary under the wolf speaker's protection. Mira learned the old languages from the pack's elder, a woman named Vera, who had been friends with Darius's grandmother, Helena. Vera taught her the ancient songs, the rituals that had been passed down through generations of wolf speakers, the ways to deepen her connection with the wild wolves and expand her abilities. "Your grandmother knew these songs," Vera told her one afternoon as they sat in the elder's home. "Helena taught them to her when they were young. Your grandmother sang them to you when you were a child, didn't she?" Mira's eyes widened. "I remember. She would sing me to sleep with strange words I didn't understand. I thought they were just lullabies." "They were teaching songs," Vera explained, "putting the knowledge in your mind so that when your gift awakened, you would already know the basics. Your grandmother was preparing you, protecting you even when she couldn't tell you the truth." The realization brought tears to Mira's eyes. Her grandmother had known, had tried to give her the tools she would need to survive, had loved her enough to plant seeds that would bloom years after she was gone. As the months passed, Mira also discovered that her wolf speaker abilities went beyond just wild wolves. She could sense emotional wounds in shifters too, could feel when someone in the pack was struggling with pain or sadness or fear. And when she reached out with her gift, offering comfort through the same connection she used with her wolves, she could help them heal. She became a counselor of sorts, someone pack members would come to when they needed someone who truly understood what they were feeling. Children who had lost parents, warriors haunted by battles, omegas who felt powerless. She helped them all. And in helping them, she found her own purpose growing deeper and richer. And through it all, Darius courted her, not with big displays or expensive gifts, but with patience and respect and genuine care. He brought her books about wolf speaker history that he had found in distant libraries. He trained with her, so she would know how to defend herself if her wolves weren't nearby. He spent hours simply talking with her about everything and nothing, sharing stories about his childhood, his fears as a young alpha, his dreams for the pack's future. He never pressured her, never demanded more than she was willing to give, never made her feel like she owed him anything for the sanctuary he had provided. And slowly, carefully, Mira found herself falling in love. Not because of the mate bond, though she could feel it growing stronger between them, but because of who he was, a leader who valued tradition and new ideas equally, a protector who gave his strength to the weakest members of his pack, a man who saw her gift as something beautiful rather than something broken, a partner who made her laugh, who challenged her thinking, who supported her growth without trying to control it. One evening, as winter approached and the first snow began to fall, Mira was in the sanctuary with her wolves when she felt the mate bond pulse with unusual strength. She looked up to find Darius standing at the edge of the clearing, watching her with an expression that made her heart race. "What's wrong?" she asked, moving toward him. "Nothing's wrong," he said softly. "I just realized it's been exactly 1 year since I found you by that fire. 1 year since 20 wolves laid down around you and changed everything." Mira smiled, remembering that night. "It feels like a lifetime ago, like that scared, rejected Omega was a different person entirely." "She was," Darius agreed. "You've become something extraordinary, Mira. And I wanted you to know that whether you ever accept the mate bond or not, whether you ever choose me or not, watching you grow into your power has been the greatest privilege of my life." Something in Mira's chest shifted. She had been waiting, holding back, telling herself she needed more time. But standing here in the falling snow, surrounded by her wolves, looking at the man who had searched for her, who had protected her, who had given her space to become herself, she realized the truth. She didn't need more time. She had already made her choice. "I'm ready," she said simply. Darius's eyes widened. "Are you certain?" "I'm certain," Mira said, moving closer to him. "I want this. I want you. I want to be your mate, your partner, your equal, not because destiny demands it, but because I choose it, because you've shown me what it means to be truly valued, because I love you." Darius crossed the distance between them in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms, kissing her with all the built-up longing of a year spent waiting. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Mira," he said roughly. "Not the wolf speaker, not the gift. You, the woman who survived rejection and banishment and came out stronger. The woman who built a family from wild wolves and refused to let the world break her. You're magnificent, and I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never forget it." "I love you too," Mira whispered. "And I'll spend the rest of my life helping you build a pack that values gifts like mine. A pack where no one is cast out for being different." Around them, her wolves began to howl, a chorus of celebration that echoed through the forest. Storm walked forward and pressed his massive head against both of them, his approval flowing through the bond. One by one, the other wolves joined in, creating a circle around the couple, blessing their union in the old way. The mating ceremony was held 2 weeks later on the night of the winter solstice, under a full moon that seemed to shine just for them. Both shifters and wild wolves attended, filling the clearing near Mira's home. Storm, now recognized as the alpha of the wild wolf sanctuary, stood beside Mira as she and Darius exchanged vows. "I, Mira, wolf speaker and Luna of Ironwood, take you, Darius, as my mate," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I promise to stand beside you, to share your burdens, to celebrate your victories. I promise to help you build a pack that honors the old ways while embracing the future. I promise to love you. Not because fate chose you, but because I choose you every day for the rest of our lives." Darius's voice was rough with emotion as he made his promises. "I, Darius, Alpha of Ironwood, take you, Mira, as my mate. I promise to protect you, to honor your gifts, to support your growth. I promise to build with you a pack where every wolf, shifter, and wild alike is valued for what they are. I promise to love you not because you saved my pack's connection to the old ways, but because you saved me, showed me what it means to lead with heart as well as strength." When Darius marked her, claiming her as his mate before the entire pack, the bond between them blazed like a star. Mira felt it settle deep in her chest, warm and permanent and perfect. She was no longer a rejected Omega. She was a wolf speaker, a Luna, a bridge between worlds, and she was exactly where she belonged. The celebration lasted long into the night, with shifters and wolves mixing in a way that hadn't been seen in generations. Mira watched it all with wonder, seeing the future she and Darius would build together. A pack that honored gifts in all their forms. A sanctuary that would grow to protect not just wild wolves, but any creature that needed safety. A legacy that would last long after they were gone. As the party wound down and wolves began to go home, Darius pulled Mira close, his arms wrapped around her from behind as they watched the last of the fire die down. "Happy?" he murmured against her hair. "Happier than I ever imagined possible," Mira replied honestly. "A year ago I was dying by a fire, certain my life was over. Now I have a mate, a pack, a purpose, everything I never knew I wanted." "The goddess works in mysterious ways," Darius said. "Garrett rejecting you was the worst thing that ever happened to you. But it was also the best thing, because it led you here to your wolves, to your gift, to me." Mira turned in his arms to face him. "I used to think being different was a curse, that not being able to shift made me broken, but now I understand. I wasn't meant to be like everyone else. I was meant to be something more, something that bridges the gap between wild and tame, past and future." "You are more," Darius agreed, kissing her softly. "And I'm going to spend every day of our lives making sure you know it." Years later, When young wolves would come to Luna Mira seeking guidance, feeling broken or different or alone, she would take them to the sanctuary. She would show them Storm and Luna and Shadow and all the other wolves who had found safety there. She would tell them her story, holding nothing back, the rejection, the banishment, the night she had been certain she was going to die. And then she would tell them about the 20 wolves who had laid down around her like a nest, who had recognized what her own pack couldn't see, that she was blessed, that she was valued, that she was exactly what the world needed. Your pack doesn't define your worth, she would tell them. The same words she wished someone had told her years ago. Your inability to fit into someone else's expectations doesn't make you broken. Sometimes the greatest gifts come in forms that others don't understand. Trust in the moon goddess, trust in yourself, and know that somewhere out there, your true pack is waiting to find you. You just have to survive long enough to meet them. And if some young Omega listening felt their hope coming back to life, if they left the sanctuary standing a little taller, believing for the first time that maybe they weren't broken after all, then Mira knew she had fulfilled her purpose. She had become the person she had needed when she was lost and alone. She had become the wolf speaker who didn't just talk with wolves, but who helped lost souls find their way home. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel for more werewolf romance tales, alpha kings, rejected mates, and powerful Omega stories. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Leave a comment below telling me what you thought of Mira and Darius's story, and what kind of werewolf stories you'd like to see next. Your support means everything and helps me create more content like this. Thank you for reading, and I'll see you in the next.